Hey there, so we're in chapter 11, and what we want to do is, for the first time ever, start looking at what happens to DNA in the body, and what's DNA used for in the body. And in the notes, it will eventually be discussed, if it hasn't yet, that DNA makes protein. And so that's what this problem I've created for you is. This is our central question we want to try to learn more about. So how does DNA produce protein molecules in the body? What I want you to do is study what's happening to the DNA and learning more about how DNA eventually makes protein. And protein is what kind of makes your body run. And we've been discussing that since chapter 6, how important proteins are, and they do so many things for our body. We have tens of thousands of different proteins. And one thing we haven't really done yet is discuss, well, how are these proteins made? And today's your first kind of opportunity to really see how DNA is used in the body to produce these proteins. So we're going to look at it and see if we can really find important details and parts of how this process happens. So we all want to learn together about what's going on with the DNA to make these proteins. And what you'll do is you're going to use this form, and it says what happened. You need to, of course, write some observations. So what you're going to do is you're going to list 6 to 8 observations. So your observations, you need to produce at least 6, but you can get 2 optional ones from others. So you can work on your own and do all 8, but if you want help from someone else, these number 7 and 8 observations can be from someone else. Make sure, of course, that whatever observations you're getting from someone else, you list their name, just as it says here, list their name. And you also want to make sure that it matches and complements or the observations you already have. So if it complements your observations, it means it's an observation you don't have yet that maybe shows another part of this process of making protein that you didn't already have or you didn't notice, right? So we're benefiting from other people's help. After that, in this example, after you get your 8 observations, review them, look at them, and then develop an explanation for the original problem. So this is where you create your hypothesis. My hypothesis is, and then of course you'd fill it out, right? My hypothesis is blank. Now hypothesis is you explaining something based on things you've learned. So you've learned a little bit just studying the DNA in the simulation of how DNA is produced. And here is where you'll generate an answer to this question now that you've learned a little. So how does DNA produce protein molecules in the body? Well, you should have an idea of how that happens now, and you should be able to summarize that in your own words. So based on your observations here, summarize in your own words just what you think would be a good answer to that. So if someone came to you and asked you that question, how does DNA produce protein molecules in the body? You could say, well, my hypothesis is blank. Because your hypothesis is based on you having some understanding. So you've studied this a little, you've explored and discovered with the simulation. So now you're ready to really give a good explanation to that hypothesis. The final thing is what can you now say about, and in this blank you would say DNA making protein or something like that. And here you can write, or you can develop a model, that is drawing. So you can draw an image that's well designed, or you can write in paragraph form. And of course, the more you design or the more you write, the better the quality of grade, and the more clear your explanation will be. Remember, whatever you write down here needs to use your observations as evidence. So if you're down here and you're saying, well, my hypothesis was this, and this hypothesis was developed based on observations or is supported by observations here. So you really want to show how what you've seen is supporting and led to your hypothesis. All right? If you choose not to write but draw, we need to go by a few principles, like how exactly should a model look? All right, so if you're making a model instead of writing at the bottom for your statement of understanding, then let's review some of the main ideas. Now, it should make you ask questions about things that are strange, weird, or not understood. So as you're designing your model, it's okay that it doesn't show a perfect understanding. You can add parts within your model that help you recognize, well, this I don't fully understand this. You can add question marks to areas that are confusing, but it should help you in designing your model, your visual model, your drawing. It should help you basically try to recognize and identify things that you think are strange, weird, or they're not understood. And for the things you do understand, it should be you showing your best understanding of the events. So normally when we make a model, it's some kind of process or phenomenon. It's something that is complex and things are happening, and you want to be able to show as best as you can based on your observations what you recall. So what that means is not drawing exactly what you saw from the simulation, but using your memory and observations only to produce your own image that represents what you saw and what you remember. So you're not drawing what you see exactly from there. I want an original representation of what you remember, something original. Just like you write things in your own words, you should draw things in your own words. And you can use any symbols. It should be a first draft of understanding. Just like when we write, when we do anything in class, it's just a first draft, so don't pressure yourself to make it perfect. It can change in the future. It should change in the future as we learn more, as you get feedback from me. You can always update it, improve upon it, so just assume that the first time you hand it in, it's just a chance to get some feedback and make it better. If you're going to draw a model, make sure that it represents your hypothesis. So whatever you wrote for your hypothesis, make sure that your model, your drawing, your representation that was drawn matches that. It doesn't go against it. It's consistent with it. It says models show a process or action. So one way that we do that is using symbols to communicate. So if you used arrows, you could use arrows to represent time or first step, second step, third step, to show basically and to communicate any kind of action before, after, a cause and effect. Think of how you can draw an image or a model to show before and after and a cause and effect, and you can always, even if something didn't look the way you saw it, if you want to symbolize it in a different way, that's perfectly fine. If you wanted to symbolize DNA by drawing licorice, I mean, that would be fine as long as you have a key. So you need a key somewhere that explains what each symbol means. All right, good luck. To get to this site, lastly, is Google PhET Gene Expressions Basic. So get right there, and then click on the first option right here that says Gene Expression, the Basics, and it's PhET, and you can see the URL says PhET. So click on it. Click on the play button. It's going to ask you this information, and you say keep. Don't worry, it's not going to hurt your computer. Click open. And if it asks you to update Java, you say later, always say later. All right, your job as you explore and you write down things is to figure out how these items in the toolbox interact with the DNA. And they'll interact with this specific region of DNA we call a gene, right? So a gene is located, it's a certain sequence of the DNA. That's the gene, right? And you'll find that some or all of these items connect to the DNA. Your goal is to find out how to use these tools, these molecular tools, and many of which are special proteins that help to make other proteins. Your goal is to collect as many proteins as you can, and this protein is made by this gene, and go to another gene. This second gene would produce this protein, and the third and final gene right here produces this protein. Now notice all proteins have different shapes because their shapes help them do their jobs. These are imaginary proteins. Proteins really don't look like this, but just like when you create a good model, you can just symbolize a protein with a shape as long as you let people know that, of course, it is a protein. All right, good luck. So you just click and grab, and in fact, when you click on them, they kind of highlight where they go. So just based on tapping the RNA polymerase, you can already see where it and the positive transcription factor should go. All right, good luck, and make some proteins.